I can see Beverly on screen. I don't know if everyone can see me. Or you just see. Right, anyhow, I'm going to proceed. So I'd like to thank William Casey, our friend from Skibbereen, who thought we were the Dublin history group. We're actually now gone national because of our topic tonight, or our speaker tonight. So we had William gave us a talk back earlier in the spring, and he's come back a second time. Last time it was on Killeen, which is children's burial sites. And William himself has a wide range of interests, including 19th century Protestant missions, the Fenian movement and Irish funeral customs. And in recent years, he's completed an MA in local history, written a book, several articles, and has given talks on various historical topics. And this one tonight, with great thanks to William, is on Find Your Way Around Archaeological Building Sites. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Good evening, folks, and thank you for having me back, I suppose. And I suppose tonight's talk is a direct result of the talk that I gave back in, I think it was February, was it, on the children's burial grounds. And somebody asked me after that, kind of, how do I find archaeological sites? And I said, you know, that's a little bit of knowledge I have that I can share with people. So it's a bit different to the normal talks that I give that would be just a lecture as such. So the first bit of it will be a normal lecture that I will just give a little bit of the history about the Archaeological Survey of Ireland and on maps and things in Ireland. And then the bulk of it really will be looking at the archaeology.ie site and the information you can get off that. So we'll just start away with the talk. I hope you can all see that. So archaeological sites and where to find them. So I said I'm going to look at, well, I'm going to start and do a little bit of the science, as I say, and have a look at the mapping systems, because you do have to have a little bit of knowledge about maps before you have a look at this. Then I'm going to look at the printed guides that are there, the maps and the guides that are published, and then, but most of the evening will be on the archaeology.ie site, and I will show some recording options. I'll try and quickly go through that because it would be of interest to some people, but other people, I know their eyes will start glazing over when I go into too much technical stuff. So, just start on mapping. So, there are basically two ways of looking at the world from a mapping point of view. As we all know, the world is round. So there's the spherical world with latitude and longitude. And then for mapping purposes, atlases and things like that are printed on flat paper. So maps kind of try to look at the world on a flat basis. So the two of those worlds don't always go that well together. So the first one is, I suppose, what we're all familiar with.
Hey, William, sorry to interrupt you. Are you supposed to be sharing your screen?
Yeah, did it not share?
Your screen.
Sorry?
We can see you, but not your screen.
Okay, sorry. Let's try there again, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, we can see it now. Thank you.
I'm sorry about that, folks.
No problem.
This is the first interesting slide. As I said, this is the spherical world as we know it. So it's divided up latitude from north to south. So the equator is 0 degree latitude up to the poles at 90 degrees north or south, and then east-west longitude 0 degrees kind of goes through Greenwich in London, and you go east to west of that. And traditionally, they were measured in degrees, minutes, and seconds. So this is just one site that I picked up that's 52 degrees, 21 minutes, and so many seconds north, and the same west, that once you're west of Greenwich, you go west. And then that's, I suppose, degrees, minutes, seconds. There's kind of isn't a very user-friendly way to calculate things or to look at things. So nowadays, we generally use a system called GPS, Global Positioning System, which was kind of pioneered really by the American military. They have a group of satellites around the world that give you your position, but they use basically the same format of latitude and longitude, but it is in a digital format. So 52 degrees, 21 minutes and 2 seconds turns out to be 52.30771. So it's the same thing, it's just in digital format. Um, now, you'll also see the term at times WGS 48, which is the technical, it's the World Geodetic System 1984. Sorry, so G or WGS 84, and that is the technical name for GPS, but it's generally called GPS. So that's the world as a sphere, but for drawing it on a map, map, as I said, are flat. So this guy, Jordaeus Mercator, he was a Flemish cartographer, and in 1569 he came up a way of mapping the world. So basically, the problem with, I suppose, particularly with longitude, that it starts at it comes to a point at the poles. So it's not an even grid. So he turned the world into a cylinder so that all the grids were even, and he cut the cylinder down and he flattened it out. And that is the world. Most maps that we see today use that principle. It's called the Mercator projection after him. But the problem is, of course, that it distorts the world because all his grids the same size. So if you look at the map of the world today, a lot of maps would show Greenland roughly the same size of Africa, when in fact you will fit 14 and a half Greenlands into Africa. And that's because under this system, the world towards the poles gets larger and the world in the equator seems to shrink. But from a mapping point of view, that's the system that's generally used. Grids are of equal size. So maps generally are a kind of a distorted view of the world on flat paper. And the Irish maps, there was a thing called the Irish grid, which had their own grids. Ireland was divided up into sections and a grid system. But the problem with that, I suppose, as I say, it's different from in reality. We are part of a sphere, and once we started using GPS and digital positioning, it was quite hard to convert those old grid flat ones into GPS. So they came up with a system, originally the Universal Transverse Mercator, which kind of is easy to translate. And the way it was described to me, now I'm not a geographer or a cartographer, but the way it was described to me, as you imagine, you had a giant globe of the world covered in cloth, and you cut out that bit that Ireland is on, and you lay it down on a flat surface, and you pull out the ends of it until that which originally bit of a sphere is flat on the ground. So it is kind of a true representation of Ireland. And then when you have that, you start drawing your lines, vertical and horizontal lines. And the way the Irish system would work is that they have a line, a number of 100 kilometers to the west and a number of lines to the south. That's the baseline. And then you start counting in meters from those lines. And every point within 1 meter has an X and a Y coordinate. And it's X and Y because it's a grid system. So you have an X and Y of 6 values, and that's basically how many meters it is from this point out in the west and how many meters it is from the point down towards the south. And you have that little area of a square meter. So very accurate system, but because the map underneath it, as I said, is this flattened map of Ireland, it is also possible to translate that into GPS. So you will see these 6-digit ones and you'll see the GPS coordinates. And this is just to try to explain why there are two different mapping systems and two different ways of displaying coordinates. So the Ordnance Survey maps of Ireland, the first Ordnance Survey in Ireland was, they started surveying in the late 1820s and started publishing maps from 1838 into 1842 to a scale of 6 inches to a mile. And really we were the first country in the world to get that kind of a detailed survey done. Obviously we were under part of the United Kingdom at the time, and Ireland was often a test bed for things like that. So we were the first to kind of have a full national survey done. And also as part of that, each county was subdivided into a number of grid sheets. And those grid sheets are still used in the background today. And we'll see later in the archaeology site where they're still used today. And you'll see these OSI sheets and you say, what is that? And it is down to the fact that each county was divided up into a number of sheets. The second edition was kind of around 1900, you see the dates there, and it was a much more detailed, down into 25 inches to the mile, so a very detailed survey. It was, sometimes it's called the third edition, the Cassini maps done in the 1940s, and basically it was just to update what had happened since, and it again was 6 inches to the mile. And then for those who wanted to buy a map that you put in your pocket, the original maps were at a scale of 1/2 inch to a mile. You could buy them for each area. And since the early 90s, they brought out a new series called the Discovery series of 1 to 50,000 is the scale. And they're done out in grids, and each grid is 2 centimeters square, or that's a kilometer square. So they're the Discovery maps that you pick up in the shop today. So this is one of them. There are 89 maps covering the island. They are very good maps. And if you ever kind of go abroad and try and buy a map of a place, you realize how good the Irish maps are. They're very clear. They show roads, towns, townland names. Height is done very well in them in terms of both contour lines and color. But most importantly for us tonight, they show archaeological sites in red text. I suppose there are some disadvantages to them, that the scale is poor if you want to do field work. If you're trying to find a Fulloch Fee or something like that in the middle of a field, it's not really, the scale isn't good enough for that. In terms of the archaeological sites, not all sites are shown on it. It is the ones that they have mapped and surveyed themselves. And of course, obviously, there is no detailed information about the sites themselves. It is just where they are. So this is just a scan of a section of a Discovery map. It's blown up a bit. This is north of the village of Drumalig in Cork. And you can see over here, there's the town land name, Castle Donovan, and there's a castle there. And I will not give you any prize for figuring out what family built that castle. But you can see it's there, it's red, it's shown on the map. The roads, these are all secondary roads. Secondary roads are in yellow. Boreens and smaller roads are in gray, and the even smaller ones are shown as tracks. And you can see the contour lines going from green to brown. And you can see, as I say, archaeological sites, standing stones, stone rows. And you'll also see little red circles in them. And those red circles are generally, this is or enclosures. They don't name them, but if you see a red circle, it is a little enclosure on the map. So excellent. And I would say if you are going to an area and you're trying to find what's in an area, the first thing I would tell you to do is buy the discovery map for the area. But as I said, I suppose the big disadvantage is, like, if you're trying to find these standing stones, it gives you a rough idea, and you probably will be able to find the standing stone, all right, if it's still there. But another thing like a Fulloch Fee, you will not be able to find that from this kind of a map. And also there are things like this, a mound over there. What's this mound about? There are obviously no descriptions. So very useful, but has the limitations. In parallel with that, I suppose there is, in Ireland, we have again an excellent archaeological survey done of the country. And the roots of that go back to the 19th century when the Board of Works started taking over some of the major sites in Ireland, like the Rock of Cash and things like that, that the government started taking care of sites. And some of the first surveys, printed surveys, were done by the Board of Works in the early 1900s. A guy, Robert Cochrane, he was a Belfast man, and he was a surveyor, and he was a chief surveyor with the Board of Work, and he published a series of on the sites under their care. And this is one of his illustrations there. They were beautifully illustrated because he was an architectural surveyor, was his profession. So very beautiful works, but they were more what was under the care of the Board of Works. To do a full archaeological survey, that work started in 1930. The Archaeological Survey of Ireland was set up. Harold Lesk was the man involved, but it really didn't last, and it kind of fell by the wayside, and was refounded in 1963, and the first field surveys were conducted in 1965 in County Louth. So they started going out into the field, finding what was there, talking to people, and mapping everything and recording everything. And then eventually in the early 80s, they come up with a standard way of recording and numbering these, called the Sites and Monument Record. So each site has an SMR record. And currently there are about 140,000 sites recorded in the Archaeological Survey of Ireland. And again, from the early 1980s, they started printing some of those surveys. So this is, the picture is the one for West Cork, not too surprisingly, since that's where I live, I suppose. But from the early 80s, they started publishing these. They're done generally by county, but some of the bigger counties are divided up. There's 4 for Cork, 2 for Kerry, 2 for Tipperary, but mostly by county. And each site is listed in the book. It's and given the SMR, the Site Monument Record, but they're classified by type. So if you're looking, this is a very well-known stone circle in Drumbeg near Glandore. So all the stone circles are listed together, which is great if you're interested in stone circles. But if you're going on holidays in Glandore, it's not that helpful that, you know, it's because it's done by type rather than location. So, but what is there is a short description of each location and map information, and there are maps and indexes as well in the back. The disadvantages with these surveys is they're incomplete. At the moment, as far as I know, there's just 16 of the 26 counties in the Republic of Ireland have been done. So not complete. Also, they're quite big, bulky books. They're not the kind of thing you will kind of put in your backpack and take around for the day. They're quite big and bulky. And as I said, classified by type, which is good. if you're a student of archaeology, not so good if you're the kind of casual person trying to find sites around Glandore. There are maps, but the maps again are quite poor. And some of the early ones, the SMRs, because SMRs came out around the time that they started publishing these. So some of the early ones don't have the SMR numbers. And also the ITM, as I discussed earlier, that's double 6-digit that the Irish Ordnance Survey used to do locations. That only came into being in 2001. So any ones published before that do not have an ITM. They have the old Irish grid. So this is just a page from the survey in West Cork, as I've done. So this is for the hut sites. Little description what a hut site means. Each of them has a number. The townland you'll find it in, short description, OS 128, and that goes back to those county sheets that I was talking about, which the Archaeological Survey still use, the date that this survey was done. But you'll notice the numbers here, it's 5 by 5. It's the old Irish grid system, not the new modern ITM. And there's no SMR number in this because this came out in the late 80s. And a modern one here, an updated one, that down here you'll see an SMR number. Oh, sorry, go back. I'm gone to the end. Right. And the SMR number is kind of CO for Cork. Again, 161 is that sheet number, and then the number within that sheet. But also up here now, you have the ITM, which will be kind of useful for the modern maps. So that's what the survey is. Lots of nice information about, in a rough rocky hill pasture, and so it describes where it is, describes what you'll see when you get there. So fantastic information. But this is an example of a map from one of them. This is kind of one of those sheets, 121, and you can see the detail isn't great. Where it is, they don't even have a lot of town land names. So maps not that good. So what we needed was something to combine maps with the information in the Archaeological Survey, and that's what we have in the site archaeology.ie. So, okay. So this is the site. When you go in, there's a lot of kind of the usual information that you find in the site, but what we're interested in here is the Archaeological Survey of Ireland. So I click on that. And again, a lot of information about it, but really what we really need is this guy, the Historic Environmental Viewer. Load, and I'll actually, guys, I was looking at one earlier. It does use cookies, so I can remember. So it shows at its, let's minimize that out there now. I'm sorry. Move things out of my way a little bit. A map of Ireland, and as you can see up here, you can zoom in and zoom out. There's a home button which will bring you back to the initial map. There is this guy which would, if you're using a phone, it will pick up your location and to take you to your location and show you where you are. But from a PC, it doesn't work because it just picks up your IP address and it thinks I'm up in Portlaoise or somewhere like that. So we'll start by just using the zoom buttons here on the right, and you can move in and out. If you do know where you want to look, you can put in an address. So I'll do that on this occasion. So I'm going to look for the townland of Halfadown, which is close to where I am here, if I spell it correctly. And that can show. Now, the one thing here, it is the official spelling of townlands, which can often be different to where they're normally spelled. And I'll just turn off a couple of things here that I done earlier. Okay. So this is Down, and there are a number of sites. The sites are marked with little red dots, and you can press on the red dot and the information will come up for this is a fortified house in Down, and that information, which is what is published on the Archaeological Survey, is there. And this is a modern map which shows you exactly where it is. So you can zoom in out a little. There's the N71. You can show the road off. It'll tell you exactly down to the field where that site is. So that's good, but there are other features as well. Up here on the right-hand side, there are a number of little icons. And the one that I'll show you first here is the base map gallery. So you click on that and it will show up a number of maps. And these are the maps that I was talking about earlier. The historic 6-inch map is the original first survey done back in around 1840. Historic 25-inch map is the second edition done around 1900. Then there's the Cassini, which is done around 1940, the modern map, and then there are 2 aerial maps. There's the OSI own aerial one, which is done by planes, from airplanes, roughly 15 years ago, about 2005 that way. And then the last one is a digital globe one, which is a satellite map. And the wonderful thing is you can just flick from one to the other. So we're in the OSI map, that's the default one, the modern OSI, which we can click on the historic 6-inch, and lo and behold, we are now back in 1840 and that site. And it looked very different then. This fortified house was actually an old Elizabethan house. It was the major landlord in this area, Cork Beechers, who owned about 30,000 acres of land. And this is their estate. It was surrounded by ornamental gardens. There was, at its height, there was even a bigger wall around it and a deer park. There's a tower here that's described, a designed Belvedere Tower. It was actually a pigeon house where they had pigeons, and they had a Belvedere up here, which was basically a lookout. It has a fantastic view out over Roaring Water Bay. So that's what it looked like in 1842, which is around the time the last of the Beechers died. So you say, okay, that's what it looked like then. What did it look like in 1900? And you'll see it's now in ruins. And because the second edition is, as I said, the 25 inches a mile, you can actually go deeper down and look at it. And now you can see what does it look like from the satellite today. And actually, this is a modern farmyard. This is the only bit of the old house left. There is a terrace here belonging to the old formal gardens, but nothing else really remains. So you can see right through 1842, 1900 to what it looks like today with a click of a button. So fantastic that way. So that's fine when you know kind of you look at locality and looking around. But I suppose the question then is, what if I want to do some searching? Say the last, so there is, I said, there is this funnel up here, which is where you can do some querying. So, and you can do different types of query. Oh, now there seems to be some drawings there for some reason. Second hand dot. I don't know what those lines are up in the, I don't know whether you can see them. Okay, I'll go back to my queries. So the last day, it depends on what how you want to do it. So when I was doing the talk on the children's burial grounds for you, I kind of said, what children's burial grounds are there in Dublin? So this first set shows you how to search for that. So I can go to County Dublin. I don't want a townland name. If you had wanted a townland, fine. It'll give me, if I want to go to a town in Dublin, to that area, and to list the towns in Dublin. But I was looking for a certain class's site. So I went down to class, children. So children's burial ground is a class's site. And I run my query. And there are just 2 children's burial grounds show up. And I can click on one of them, and shows here, Brideswell Common. If I zoom in on that, you see it's in the middle of a housing estate today, but it says in 1944, a burial place for unbaptized children was there. And we can see, okay, that's it today. Go back to the map. Was there anything in 1842? Sorry, I have to zoom out. And it just shows the well that they mentioned, but no mention of a burial ground. And the same in the 1900 one. So I'll just go back to the query a minute, and just the second one, which is up near Racool. Here's another one, situated in pasture land in a brow is a small valley. And again, we look at the modern map, and shows, okay, it's in the pasture, all right, but there doesn't seem to be much left there. It's just out in the field. I'm going to zoom out. And we look at the 1842 map. It does show it in 1842 and calls it a graveyard. And in the later edition, again, graveyard disused. So at least it's marked as a graveyard, and you can see at least hasn't been built upon yet. So you can find a class's site and go through them like that. But for the person going on holiday and wants to see the sites in a certain place, how do you do that? Well, down here you have search by custom shape. And the question that was asked after the last talk was somebody who was heading off to Inishmore Island in the Aran Islands, and they wanted to know what sites are they on Inishmore. So you can see there's quite a lot of red dots there. But I just want to see what is on the island itself and nothing else. So I can pick a tool here. I'm going to pick the rectangular tool here. Go over to the map, click on it, and start drawing. And you'll see your rectangle being made. And that covers the island. Release it. And now all the sites on Inishmore are shown to you. And you can decide to sort that by the class of site or the town land. So again, if you're interested in a certain class, we'll go down. Just like Dublin, there are 2 children's burial grounds out on Inishmore, and you can click on that and it will go down onto the site and give you a description. And if you want, you can do the same thing. You can look at it. What did it look like back in 1840? And you can see it was a graveyard and there was a cross. So, and you can do that for all the sites on Inishmore. Now, I will come back to Inishmore in a minute and see, because that's fine, but every time you want to do Inishmore, do you have to do that every time? There's a way around that, but I do want to show you a couple of other little features before I show you how to save those sites and how to store them. So up here, between the filter and the maps, there's another layered guy here, and he's the layered list. And by default, the sites and monument records are ticked. There are notification sites as well, but there are zones of notification, but they're really, I suppose, not that particularly interesting to us. They just show certain areas for planning. The other thing that could be of interest is this National Inventory of Architectural Heritage. And they show up, the SMR sites set up as red, these show up as blue. If you click on one of those, you'll see a building. So basically this is a separate database of the architectural heritage of Ireland. It's maintained by UNOI Galway. They have their own website that has everything. But in here, it shows you where those things are. You can see a picture of it, and you can go to the main record, which will take you out to the UNOI site. So that can be quite useful as well when you're going to visit an area. It isn't just the archaeological sites, it's also architecture. The last one here is more of a technical one, and this is the records of monuments and places, which was a slightly earlier way of looking at the sites and monument records. And when you put that on, I'll turn it off a minute. When you put it on, you will see these grids. And these are going back again to the first Ordnance Survey map, the grids that each county was done in. If you click on that grid, pull this over, you'll see this was the 6-inch sheet, 110 for Galway, and you can click on that and it will bring up a map of that sheet and with each site in it. But again, the maps are not that clear, and it's kind of site 1, 2, 3, 4, which goes back to the printed survey. So they're not a huge use, but just to show you, they are there. And if you do turn that on, that's what it does really. It goes back to the old way of looking. The other feature that I want to show you is that up here there's a little easel, and sometimes this doesn't show. If it's not showing, you just click the last guy here for more and you pick it out of that. But I was using it earlier, so there's an easel. So this allows you to draw on the map or to pick a point. And this can be handy for a number of reasons. If you want to kind of show a point, you can pick a point, you can just pin it on the map. And then if you wanted to see what that point looked at through time, again, you can go to this over in the historic, we can go to the digital, where that is today. So you can pick your own points of interest that might not be on the survey. There might be no red or blue dot, but you can pick a point. Undo that. The guy I use, or kind of use quite a little bit, is this line. And you can also turn on show measurements down here, and we'll do it in kilometers. So if you want to know what's the distance between that site and this site, you put on your line, you click on that site, you draw your line over to this side, and it's 1.2 kilometers. So that is a handy tool to use at times. And I will show you later on how to get your 5 kilometers if in lockdown using this tool. So there are some of the tools that people often don't look at. There are other ones up here. Locate is basically, if you know your those 6-digit codes, and you'll notice actually, I should have shown you earlier down here in the bottom, that when you move around the map, these 6-digit codes are the ITM values. So they're always there. If you know that, you can put it in, or you can go to the old Irish grid, or you can use the GPS. They call it the official name, the WGS84. You can put that in and go to a location. And the other one is a data export. Data export really is more for mapping. It is not in the format that is useful. These are geodatabase files and AutoCAD files and things like that. Not really for the ordinary person. So that's one I never use. But all the rest are of some use. But back to, I have now my list of 444 sites for Inishmore, but I don't want to be going and do that search every time. So there is a thing down here, copy results. And we'll click on that. And what it does, it exports it out into a comma separated file, CSV file. I'm going to open that file. And normally in most PCs, it'll open up in Excel. So now it has exported all those 444 sites. And it has given us the SMR number, the class, the townland. There's the ITMs, those 6-digit codes. There's the old Irish grid reference. So now at least you have them saved, but still they're not in particularly useful format to you. So what I've done over the years, I've developed a couple of ways of making these more useful for me. And let's skip all of that. And I will go through. Now I have a how-to document done on all this because this next bit is a bit technical. So the first thing I do is those Irish grid references, no use to me as far as I'm concerned. So I just click on those 2 columns and delete them. What I do want though is a link. So I just call this column a link. And I have a formula done, which I've embedded into that document. So you can take that formula out of the document, copy that. I'm using Control-C to copy. Go into F2, grid F2, go up to the formula bar here and paste that formula in, press return, and now you have something that has the same SMR value here, but you'd see this is a link. And when you press on that, it will go off to our archaeological site. You will find that particular site eventually. And you can click on it and see what it is. So now you have an Excel sheet, but with links back to the archaeology.ie site. And if you want to do that for all the sites, just down on the bottom right-hand corner of the grid, catch that, drag it down, and you'll see them appear for all of them. So now you have something that is more useful. There's also, I suppose, these are in the ITMs, the Irish Transverse. There's another site called here. And again, all this is in the document that I'll share with you afterwards. Irish grid reference. So if we take just the first one here and we copy out again the X value, go back in, it's ITM X. And copy out the next one. And press go. It'll convert it now to GPS latitude and longitude for you. It'll also give you a series of links down here. So you can view it in Bing Maps, you can view it in Google Maps or Street View. Now there's no Street View actually for the Aran Islands, but we'll just click it there and we'll take you out to Google Maps, which people could be far more familiar with Google Maps. So again, once you have the ITM, it will translate it and take it for you. Now, before I'll probably losing half a week at this stage, but I'll just show you another trick I have that you can take that latitude and put it in here into G. We call it lat. There's latitude there and long. And Google. And we'll take longitude value. And I have another formula that I did out over the years. A longer one this time. And again, we go to Google the I, paste that one in. And now you have a link called Google Map. And agree to that. And that will show you up again in Google Map. And when you have, now, you say, that's great, William, but there are 444 of those. Do I have to do each one of those individually? And the answer is no, that there is a program that you can download from the Ordnance Survey Ireland website. It's not a particularly user-friendly one, but there is a program there that you can get a listing, you can convert a listing of ITMs to latitude and longitude. I'm not going to go into that tonight because it's quite technical, but I can just to show you that you can do them one at a time. And again, you can create a link there. And once all that is done, save it in Excel format, or otherwise you lose all that nice formatting. Let's save it as English. And I do appreciate some people are rolling their eyes at the moment, but just to show what you can do with that information. So I'll get out of that and we'll go back. My screen now won't. I guess. So that's kind of just a run through it using that site. There are a number of other options as well, but I'll just briefly mention one that I use quite a bit, which is Google Earth. Which again is free to download onto your machine. And I should have opened it up earlier. So over the years, I have created my own, I've brought in sites. So all the graveyards, all the Killinis that I was talking about the last day. And I'll just go down to one. So again, bring up the properties there. So again, this uses the old, but if you put in the GPS, it will take it. So you can put in the GPS values, you can name it, you can categorize them. And I showed you some of this. The last night anyone was there, that once you're in there, then you can do lovely things like turn on and off. So these are all the Killini sites, and then you put in the graveyards, and I was showing you the last day how the graveyards fit in the islands, as I call them. So that, again, that is just to show you, that's just one application for mapping. There are actually hundreds and hundreds of applications and apps on the phone that once you have the data here from the sites, once you've converted to longitude and latitude, you can use it in many, many ways. I suppose that's just one small demonstration how to use it. Wrong one, William. So now we'll go back to this site because this is where we are. And I'm going to show you how to do the 5 kilometers as a way of a recap of what we have done on this site. So I'll go back to home. I'll put my map back to OSI. And this time I'm going to go to my own townland, Big Marsh, Cork, and we'll come down to Big Marsh. I should go to the satellite view. And this little bungalow here is where I'm talking to you from this evening. So I'll zoom out a little. Now, there is no easy way, unfortunately, of doing this, but I have discovered a way of doing it. So you start with marking my house. Zoom in a little bit again to get it. So I create a point. I'm going to pick a nice big red sun, and I'm going to put it over and click and add my point. So that's my house. Now, all we remember, it was 5 kilometers as the bird flies. So that's a circle with a diameter of 10 kilometers. And we can draw a circle here. And I'll make the color a bit red because it's easier to see. Sorry, outline color is what I need. And the transparency, I'll put that way down to 0 because we don't, transparency would make the inner circle red as well. I'm going to show measurement. Now, the thing to remember about measurement is this, it's actually going to measure the circumference of the circle rather than the diameter. So for those of you who remember your maths at school, you multiply the diameter by pi to get the distance of the circumference. So basically you have a circle with a circumference of 31 kilometers is the range you can do. And this takes a little bit of trial and error. You'll circle, you'll start here. You can pull out and, oh, thought I turned the transparency off. Maybe I put it the wrong way. Transparent 100. Start here. Yes. And move out. After a bit of trial and error, you'd stop here and it says, oh, 18. That's it's a bit. 18 square kilometers. There's 15. Just 15 kilometers there. Seems to have a double circle now for some reason. So not really easy to do, but that's not big enough for us anyway. So I'll go again. At this stage, I know it's out around here. And this one is 26 kilometers, so that's close enough for the moment. So that shows you all the sites within the area. But again, well, that shows you I want a list of those. So I'll go back here now to my query data. Clear the old query I had. Now, unfortunately, there's no circle here, but there is this custom shape. I'm going to use that guy. I'm going to start again at my center. I'm going to move out to this circle. And now I'm going to, with a very steady hand, which I don't have, obviously, I'm going to trace around that circle. And now, lo and behold, I have a list of 125 sites within my 5 kilometers from home. So now I can plan my days for the next lockdown. I have no idea what the bee bowls are. What should I do? They're up the road from me. So I can say, what the hell are these? And I can go and see where it is. 9 ankled bee bowls in the south of a north wall. And I can visit that one day. And then the next day I can visit another site. And I have 125 days of fun during the next lockdown. And if I want, I can copy those results out as before, save them onto Excel, and do my mapping. So folks, that is what I intend showing you tonight and how to use the site. And I am more than happy to take any questions if any of you are still there.
Thanks a million, William. You know you have a background in IT, and I feel like I've been to a class as well as the history talk. So it's very handy to be good on the computers when doing all this.
I kind of accept that some people will say, I have no idea what that was about, but it just shows that if you are a little bit computer literate, and again, the how-to is there too, that I'll give to you to distribute to people who want it, if they do want to try and save out to Excel.
And I have to say, I find that archaeological site difficult, and I didn't know what any of the features were before, but I have loads of notes now because I'd seen the red dots and the blue dots before and didn't actually know what indicated what. So that's brilliant. So before we go to questions, I want to say a big thank you, first of all, for doing this and going through it all with us. And I see Marissa's coming through in the chat. So Marissa, would you like to ask a question? If you'd like to unmute yourself, I'll ask everyone else to keep themselves muted for now.
Hi, thank you so much, William. That was amazing. I love that site to begin with. We've used it a lot, but you have done a deep dive, and now we can use it with more efficiency. So thank you.
I hate to tell you the number of hours I spent on that site.
I can totally see why. My question is maybe a little off kilter, so if it is, please let me know. We have a farm down near Mill Street in the townland of Shannockanock. It has several Follic-Fias on it. Yep. But we saw a large stone kind of in the field that looks like a standing stone. I'm not sure, but it's not listed anywhere. Do you know how I would go about trying to find out if it is anything?
Well, again, if it's not listed on the archaeology site, it means it hasn't been recorded as an archaeological feature. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not. There are quite a few that haven't been listed. So there is in the archaeology site, if you look around it, there is a way of recording a site if you find it. I haven't done it in a little while now, but you can actually record it and see. They should come back to you and ask you a few questions, and they'll decide kind of whether it should go in or not. Now, up to COVID time, they generally were back to you quickly enough, but obviously at the moment, they're not doing any field work.
Yeah.
There's a form somewhere on the site to,
I can find it.
and that's probably the easiest way of, and as I say, they will decide if it's something to go in or not.
Because I really don't feel qualified to say, yes, I have a standing stone on my property. Thank you.
No problem.
And actually, William, just following on from Marissa's question, you were saying that I presume they is the people who run archaeology.ie, but you had mentioned for the built heritage, it was the NUG, I think you said. So do you have to go
Yes.
to different people depending on whether it's a red dot or a blue dot?
I'm not that familiar with the blue dots, to tell the honest truth. I'm not sure how you get a listing on there. But the archaeological, and again, it is done that basically each county has its own kind of person. So if you find a site like Melissa there in Mill Street, it will go to the Cork County. Like it is kind of distributed around the country, and they maintain these lists at county level, even though the survey itself is a national effort.
And I see Carmel has her hand up, but just before I go to Carmel or Charles with their question, I just wanted to, just what you were saying about that piece, I sent on, some people will know that I run a Facebook group for a part of the Royal Canal, and we found these tunnels, and I sent them on to the Heritage Officer a couple of weeks ago, and she came back last week. They'd no record of them. They didn't even know they were there, and they could actually date back to the early 1800s when the canal was built. So it's trying to get, to get them included somewhere is important, but to even get someone to review them. But you've given me a couple of leads tonight, so thank you for that.
Oh yeah, and just because it's not there doesn't mean, people kind of think, oh, it's not a site, so because it's not up in the survey, but they don't have all the sites. It's an ongoing, it's an unending, really.
Exactly, and it is back to the citizen science, really, isn't it? That people are to get involved. Now, sorry, Carmel or Charles, one of you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, it's me. Hi, Christine. William, I was just wondering, I heard that when they're drawing the maps, the Ordnance Survey, that they make deliberate errors so that if anybody copies it, they know. How do we know? How can we identify the deliberate error?
I don't think the Ordnance Survey make deliberate errors. GPS used at one stage throw you out by a few meters. And that was because it was an American military and they didn't want anybody in the world having exact coordinates.
Yeah.
But,
I think it was actually in the UK. We lived there for a long time. That there was always a deliberate error so that they could identify, their maps.
That GPS error isn't there anymore because other countries started sending up their own satellites, including Europe have their own satellites up there.
Yeah.
So there was no point in having that deliberate error anymore.
Okay.
Don't know of any, as I say, on the mapping, but the one thing I will tell you about Ordnance Survey Ireland, they guard their copyright. They really do. That if you ever are using one of their maps or anything, just be careful. They guard their copyright.
Absolutely, yeah. Fair enough. They put the effort in.
They put the effort in, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. I see Susan has in the chat. Incredible the amount of work you've put in, William. Have any universities or academics shown an interest in your research? It'd be a huge resource for history and archaeology students. Yeah, there's a thesis there in the Kilkenny document.
There's a lot of thesis in. I suppose I have done work with UCC, but I suppose on different projects, really, it is more gathering oral history that I've worked with UCC rather than this kind of site mapping. But I am working on the book on the children's burial grounds. But again, that has really been put back to the last couple of years because I haven't been able to get out to sites and do site visits. But it probably will be next year now before that is there. But no, I've never kind of worked with universities, but I'm open to offers.
You should sell yourself.
Yes.
Sell yourself, because there's an awful lot of research done there, you know, and it should be logged. I mean, an equivalent would be Brian J. Goggin now. He's sadly passed away. He's an older gentleman, but he was doing an awful lot of work on the inland waterways of Ireland, and the National Library have now taken his archive of work. So
Yeah.
there's definitely this sort of...
There's huge for like there was a gentleman down in the Beara Peninsula. I'm trying to desperate of remembering names. They'll come to me now as soon as the thing is over. And he did a fantastic amount of work, his own field work, going out and recording archaeological sites in the Beara Peninsula. And he published it. And unfortunately, in the last couple of years, he's got dementia or Alzheimer's, and he kind of, you know, but I suppose it is the fact that he published it and it's there in the book was fantastic. Otherwise, you know, and I suppose everything I've done is recorded somewhere. So at least it is recorded, yeah.
Anyone else have any questions you'd like to throw William's way?
Owen has his hand up there.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead.
Two things before my question. Famously, on the 1-inch ordnance survey, which no one uses anymore, they tidied up the contours where they knew no one would go, except, of course, hill walkers and mountaineers who had a habit of falling off Carntoogle because the contours were wrong. Secondly, the West Cork author may well be Jack Roberts.
No, Jack, no, he's in no man. Jack has done it. Went to sites and did a beautifully illustrated guides to the archaeological sites. I think it's O'Mahony that did a very extensive archaeological survey of the Beara Peninsula.
Anyway, Jack, for West Cork in particular, Jack Roberts is a name to remember. He's a bit airy-fairy for some archaeologists, but his accuracy is impeccable, and his drawings are first class. This is the first talk I've been on to where the presenter had the same little line of icons under his screen as I have under mine. And I was wondering why Dropbox was coming up twice and KeyPass and everything else. But my question is this, how can I get those lookups for Excel, please?
Oh, there are in, I've done up a how-to document. Oh, I'm not sharing anymore. I've done up a how-to document, so I will share it with you, or I'll send it to Chris.
Send it to Chris, perhaps.
Yeah.
If you send it to me, and then if anyone wants it, just let me know, and I can email it to you. I can't attach it to anything on Meetup.
By the way, Chris, was that deep cutting done by hand on the Royal Canal?
The deep sinking was blown up by gunpowder and manual labour, because it was the old Carpenterstown quarries. And these tunnels are big enough for people to stand in. And they look like 19th century brick, and nobody can tell me what they are. A culvert for loading the boats when the towpath is 30 foot above the water. We don't know what the purpose or the origin is yet.
A spectacular cutting on the Royal Canal, which Chris minds.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you very much, William. You had a little red box in your Dropbox, by the way.
Oh yeah, and I'm trying to figure out. I was looking at that.
Do it afterwards.
I was looking at that book, and there's no message. I can't see why they have a little red tin on it for me.
And Excel is also brilliant for the 1901 census. You can get a complete townland or a complete anyway. Yes. Paste it all into Excel, and suddenly you have an essay on the oldest, the youngest, Catholics, Protestants, jobs, where they came from, Irish, English, the lot. It's brilliant. Anyway, well done, young Casey.
Thank you.
And actually, I second that about the census, using it in connection with the maps. Again, Porterstown is an area that is nearly being lost to history around here, because it's between Clonsilla and Coolmine, which is effectively Blanchardstown, and it's still quite rural. But when you pull up Porterstown in the census by townland, and I always used to use a family tree rather than by townland, the amount of horse trainers and jockeys, because it was all big domains, big horse, estates, and the amount of equine related, forges, everything that would no longer be needed or there. So you're right, Owen, maps and the maps and the census go together very nicely. Any other questions, please? Anyone else like to raise their hand or ask anything? Yeah.
Oh, don't quite anything.
I think everyone's now going back to do Excel 101, William.
Yeah.
I have to say pivot tables, I never master them. What I was going to say is, just if there's no final questions, I'd ask Beverly to perhaps stop the recording, and we just say a very big thank you to William for giving up his time and sharing his research. And I'll make sure that if anyone wants that document, just send me a message with your email and I can forward it on.